You probably think weddings are beautiful, days full of joy, love, and unity. But for me, my sister's wedding was the day I realized I never truly existed in my own family. I wasn't seated with my parents. I wasn't in any photographs. And I wasn't even in the bridal party. As Rachel twirled across the floor in the same Vera Wang gown I once showed her in a magazine, with Jason, my ex, smiling down at her like she hung the stars, I felt the ground disappear beneath me. The applause, the toasts, the flashing cameras, all of it echoed like a dream I was never invited to. They called her perfect, poised, deserving. Me? I was an afterthought. The quiet one. The placeholder daughter they wheeled out for symmetry and pushed aside once the show began. But what none of them knew, what Rachel would never expect, is that I came to that wedding with a secret. Not just pain. Not just bitterness. But proof. Of lies. Of betrayal. Of something that could bring everything crashing down. I came armed with truth. And the moment my mother lifted her glass to toast the daughter who deserves everything, I finally decided. If they wouldn't see me, I would make them watch me burn their fairy tale to the ground.
I always knew I was the afterthought. But nothing, and I mean nothing, prepared me for the moment my own mother stood up at my sister Rachel's wedding, crystal champagne flute in hand, and toasted to the daughter who truly deserves everything. She didn't glance in my direction. She didn't have to. Because I wasn't even sitting at the family table. That moment, under the shimmering chandeliers of Boston's Seaport Hotel, surrounded by 400 perfectly manicured guests, something inside me snapped. All the years of being invisible, being passed over, being just good enough, but never quite, flooded to the surface. I stood up, my heels clicking on the marble floor, heart pounding in my chest. 6 words. That's all I said. You'll remember this day. Just not why. Gasps echoed around the room. People stared. But my mother, she just smiled, calm as ever, and turned back to her precious Rachel. That's when I knew what I had to do. That day wouldn't end the way they'd planned. It would end the way I needed it to. Because I wasn't just the forgotten daughter anymore. I was the one rewriting the story. Part 2. I grew up in Beacon Hill, one of Boston's most historic and exclusive neighborhoods. Picture cobblestone streets, antique gas lamps, and ivy-covered brownstones. The kind of place that smelled of old money, polished hardwood floors, and expectations. My name is Audrey Walker. I'm 29 years old. And for as long as I can remember, I've lived in the shadow of my older sister Rachel. Rachel, the golden girl. 3 years older. Flawless. With her natural blonde waves, sapphire blue eyes she inherited from her mother, and a voice like honey that could melt even the most indifferent stranger. Our family home was practically a museum of her life, her kindergarten drawings framed and hung in the hallway, her debate trophies polished weekly, her Harvard acceptance letter immortalized in a glass frame above the fireplace. Me? I was the footnote. I wasn't unloved, just unseen. Overshadowed. Ignored. My academic achievements were met with lukewarm "that's nice, sweetheart" before the conversation pivoted right back to Rachel's latest victory. I remember my 6th birthday vividly. Mom had promised a party, balloons, cake, friends. But Rachel had a last-minute soccer tournament. So my party? Postponed. Indefinitely. Instead, I got a cupcake at the kitchen table 2 days later, with a crooked candle and Rachel's trophy sitting next to it. "We're celebrating 2 victories today," Dad had said. Rachel's team won, and Audrey turned 6. Even then, I knew which of those mattered more. When Rachel turned 16, they hired a live band and rented out an entire restaurant. For mine, Mom forgot to order a cake. She rushed to the grocery store, and the sheet cake read Aubrey in blue frosting. I didn't correct her. Our dad, Richard Walker, a high-powered investment banker, worked long hours but never missed a single one of Rachel's events. Debate finals, theater showcases, rowing regattas, he'd even cancel business trips. For me, it was usually, "Sorry, sweetheart, big client meeting," or "Next time, I promise." My mom, Diana, was no different. She was effortlessly elegant, always hosting charity luncheons or spa weekends with Boston's elite. She adored Rachel, her mirror image. They even dressed alike sometimes. I tried. I really did. I joined the art club, discovered I had a passion for digital design, and later earned a partial scholarship to Northeastern. I worked hard, kept my head down, built a solid life. But when Rachel got into Harvard, the celebration lasted a full week. When I graduated from Northeastern with honors, Mom offered a distracted, "We'll go out sometime soon." It never happened. Still, I pressed on. I became a digital marketing strategist at a top Boston agency. Bought my own condo in Somerville. Made a life for myself. A life I was proud of even if no one in my family noticed. Then came Rachel's engagement to Jason Blackwell, heir to a commercial real estate empire. Tall, charming, perfect hair, the kind of guy you'd expect to see on the cover of GQ. Mom was ecstatic. "The wedding we've always dreamed of," she whispered during the engagement dinner. I was sitting right next to her. Still single. Still invisible. Planning the wedding became the new religion in our household. Every Sunday dinner was now Wedding Sunday. Flower arrangements, dress fittings, cake tastings. I tried to contribute once, suggested a local bakery with an amazing pistachio layer cake. Rachel barely glanced up from her phone. "We're going with butchery." I wasn't even in the bridal party. I found out through a group email. No explanation. No apology. When I asked Mom why, she sighed. "It's Rachel's day, Audrey. Let her have it the way she wants." I smiled. Nodded. But something cold settled into my chest. The kind of cold that doesn't go away. The kind that waits. The weeks leading up to Rachel's wedding were a slow, excruciating unraveling. From the outside, it looked like perfection in motion, Pinterest-worthy centerpieces, custom invitations embossed with gold leaf, and a Vera Wang gown that cost more than my entire college tuition. But inside me, something sharp was beginning to take shape. It started as quiet indignation but quickly hardened into resolve. It wasn't just the fact that I wasn't a bridesmaid, or that I was seated at table 19 with ex-colleagues my mother barely remembered. It was everything, the years of being pushed aside, of being treated like a footnote in my own family story. I kept telling myself I wouldn't do anything, that I would just survive the wedding and then slowly fade away from their lives. But then I found the notebook. It was in Rachel's designer purse. She had tossed it carelessly onto the bridal suite's vanity, and while helping her look for a missing earring, it spilled open. My eyes caught a logo I recognized, our father's firm. I hesitated, but curiosity gave way to disbelief as I flipped through the leather-bound pages. Bank records. Transaction summaries. Transfer memos. Offshore accounts. Rachel had been siphoning money, massive amounts. Quiet, strategic withdrawals spread over years. The firm was bleeding, and no one had noticed. I didn't take the notebook. But I did take photos. My heart pounded as I flipped through the pages, documenting everything. I didn't know what I was going to do with this evidence, not yet. But I knew I had to hold on to it. Maybe for protection. Maybe for leverage. That night, I couldn't sleep. I stared at the ceiling of my tiny Somerville condo and replayed everything. How they'd laughed behind my back. How my mother said I didn't belong at the main table. How they saw me as a burden, a shadow, an afterthought. And now this, Rachel wasn't just the perfect daughter. She was also a thief. But the universe wasn't done twisting the knife. 2 days later, I was in the bridal suite again. Rachel was fussing over centerpieces and barking orders. Her phone buzzed on the table. I didn't plan to look. But I did. And what I saw made my blood run cold. A message preview from Marcus B. Asterisk, can't wait to see you in room 718. Our secret toast. Just like old times. Marcus was Jason's best man. And Rachel's ex from college. A guy she always claimed had been a harmless fling. It wasn't harmless now. I clicked through the message thread. I knew I shouldn't have. But this wasn't just curiosity anymore, it was survival. My instincts told me that if Rachel was capable of stealing from our father, she was capable of anything. Their texts were laced with affection. Inside jokes. Photos. Plans to meet that night. On her wedding night. I took screenshots of everything. The day of the rehearsal dinner, I watched it all unfold like a play I didn't belong in. Jason's family, wealthy, elegant, and clearly enchanted with Rachel, mingled gracefully. My mother beamed like she was royalty. My father? Clueless. Still bragging about Rachel's Harvard days and her new role as a future Blackwell. I hovered at the edge of the room, forgotten. And yet, I knew more than anyone in that space. I had the truth. But truth is a loaded weapon. You can hold it, but using it? That requires timing. And I knew exactly when to pull the trigger. The wedding day arrived. Rachel was flawless. The church was overflowing with flowers and distant relatives. A live harpist played as guests shuffled into pews. I stood quietly in the back, a silent observer, invisible as always. But this time, invisibility was power. I watched Rachel glide down the aisle with our father, smiling like she hadn't destroyed everything sacred. Like she wasn't preparing to meet another man that very evening. I wondered if Jason would ever see her the way I did now. I wondered what would break him more, the betrayal of infidelity, or the financial sabotage. But mostly, I wondered if anyone would believe me. My father? Maybe. But it would destroy him. The firm was his legacy. So I waited. The reception was held at the Boston Seaport, a fairy tale ballroom glittering with crystal chandeliers and overflowing champagne. I was seated near the service entrance. Again. Rachel had positioned me far from the head table, perhaps hoping I'd disappear entirely. But I didn't. I watched. I waited. When the toasts began, I leaned forward. The best man went first, then the maid of honor. Both speeches were glowing, sanitized versions of Rachel and Jason's love story. Then my mother stood. She lifted her glass and said the words that would live in my memory forever. To the daughter who truly deserves everything. A silence fell. Not because the words were shocking, but because they were so expected. Everyone laughed politely. Glasses clinked. And I stood. 6 words escaped my mouth before I could think twice. You'll remember this day. Just not why. Rachel's smile faltered. My mother's face froze. Jason turned. And in that moment, I realized what I needed wasn't revenge. It was recognition. Recognition of truth. Of years of pain. Of the real story. And as I reached into my purse for the flash drive, the one with all the screenshots and financial records, I knew one thing. This wedding wasn't the end. It was the beginning. I remember the exact moment everything shattered. It wasn't some explosive fight or sudden revelation. It was a quiet, almost surgical slice, precise and irreversible. It was the night of Rachel and Jason's rehearsal dinner, hosted at the Langham, dripping with luxury and pretension. I had no real role, no speech to give, no toast to make. Just another seat filler in my sister's perfect production. I told myself I'd behave, stay invisible like always, but fate had other plans. I'd gotten up to use the restroom. The hallway was dim, lined with gilded mirrors and velvet walls. I must have taken a wrong turn because I ended up by the private lounge. I was about to turn back, until I heard it. Rachel's voice. Can you believe Audrey wore that hideous navy dress? It's like she's trying to disappear into the carpet. Then my mother, her laughter like glass chimes shattering inside me, answered, We've seated her at the back tomorrow. Far enough from the main table. She won't be a distraction. I froze. My heart thudded in my chest, loud and painful. I pressed my back against the wall as more daggers were thrown in the form of careless jokes. She's just always been forgettable, Rachel sighed. Not like us. Forgettable. That word echoed in my skull, louder than anything I'd heard in years. It wasn't just cruel. It was confirmation. I had spent my life trying to earn love that was never meant for me. A decade of suppressed rage, heartbreak, and rejection boiled up in one suffocating wave. I couldn't breathe. I stumbled into the bathroom, hands shaking. I gripped the marble sink and stared into the mirror. My eyes weren't blue like Rachel's. My hair wasn't golden. But what I saw, what they had never seen, was fire. A storm of truth and rage rising behind a calm face. And then something strange happened. I smiled. Not a fake, polite Audrey smile. A knowing, dangerous smile. If they wanted me silent, I'd make sure my voice echoed for years. This wasn't about stealing the spotlight, it was about reclaiming my place. taking back what I'd been denied my entire life. That night, I didn't cry. I didn't retreat. I started planning. I pulled out my phone and opened the photos I'd secretly taken from Rachel's purse earlier that day, evidence of her embezzling money from Dad's firm. Transactions, offshore accounts, wire transfers. It was all there. And then I remembered the text from Marcus. "Can't wait to see you tonight, beautiful. Room 718. Jason's best man." I took a deep breath, snapped screenshots, and created a new folder in my phone, Operation Swan Song. Because tomorrow, at that fairy tale wedding, I wouldn't be the forgettable little sister. I would be the reckoning. The morning of Rachel's wedding arrived like a blade, cold, sharp, and impossible to ignore. Everyone buzzed around the bridal suite like bees around a queen. Rachel sat in her silk robe, surrounded by her bridesmaids, sipping mimosas and laughing like she hadn't insulted me the night before. My mother was doting over her, fussing over a loose curl, adjusting the veil, telling her for the 10th time how proud she was. Not a single glance in my direction. Not one. But I wasn't there for their approval anymore. I had a mission. A truth to unleash. I stepped outside the suite, phone in hand. I reviewed everything I had, the screenshots, the embezzlement records, the text messages. I even took a backup, uploaded it all to the cloud, sent a copy to my private email, and scheduled a timed message to go out later that evening. Just in case. No turning back now. During the ceremony, I smiled. I even clapped. Rachel looked radiant walking down the aisle, all lace and perfection, and Jason looked like a man in a dream. Poor Jason. I knew what he was walking into, a marriage built on lies, theft, and betrayal. But I wasn't going to tell him. Not yet. The wedding wasn't just a celebration. It was the stage. And I intended to set the entire thing on fire, metaphorically, of course. At the reception, I waited. I watched. I saw Rachel circle the room, receiving compliments, posing for photos, drinking in her manufactured fairy tale. My mother basked in reflected glory like a sun-chasing flower. Jason looked proud. So did my father. They had no idea. Then, during the toast, my mother raised her glass, champagne glittering like secrets in the light. To the daughter who has always brought us joy, pride, and honor. Rachel, we love you. That was it. My turn. I stood up slowly, clinked my glass gently with a fork. The room fell silent. Even Rachel tilted her head, confused. I smiled warmly, like a lamb. Hi everyone. I'm Audrey, Rachel's little sister. Some of you may not know me, and that's okay. I've spent most of my life not being known. But today, I'd like to share a story. Rachel's eyes narrowed. My mother stiffened. My father tilted his head, confused but still polite. I continued. A story about masks. About how appearances can be deceiving. You see, some people spend years building a perfect image, a perfect life, while hiding the rot underneath. I took a deep breath. And sometimes, people you... Murmurs rippled through the crowd. Rachel stood up, her face pale. Audrey. But I didn't flinch. Rachel. I know. About the money. About Marcus. About everything. The room gasped. I reached into my bag and pulled out a small stack of printouts, the photos, the transfers, the texts. I walked toward Jason and gently placed them in his hand. You deserve the truth. I think we all do. He looked down, eyes scanning quickly, then froze. Color drained from his face. Is this real? He whispered. Rachel stepped forward, trembling. You're ruining everything. No, I said quietly. You did that all by yourself. The silence that followed was deafening. Then Jason dropped the papers and walked out. My mother shouted my name. My father demanded I explain. Rachel screamed. But I just walked away. For the first time, they all saw me. Not as an accessory. Not as the afterthought. But as the storm. I didn't stay to watch the aftermath. I didn't need to. As I stepped outside the hotel, the sharp Boston air filled my lungs. For the first time in years, I felt weightless. Not happy. Not victorious. Just free. And then my phone buzzed. A text from Jason. Thank you. For telling me before I said forever to someone who never meant it. That one message felt like justice. Not the dramatic kind you see in movies, no explosions or tears, but the kind that slices clean and deep. Within 24 hours, the fallout began. Jason called off the honeymoon. His family demanded answers. Gregory Blackwell, a man who rarely spoke above a whisper, reportedly had a shouting match with my father in his office. Word about the embezzlement spread fast once Jason shared the documents I gave him with their legal team. By Monday, the firm's board was involved. Financial audits launched. Rachel's name was removed from every joint asset she shared with Jason. My father? He tried to cover it up, but it was too late. The numbers didn't lie. And me? I didn't gloat. I didn't scream, I told you so. Instead, I went home. I lit a candle. And I cried, not for Rachel, not for the wedding, not even for the years lost to neglect. I cried for the girl I used to be, the one who begged for approval, who shrank herself to make others comfortable, who gave pieces of her light to people who never deserved her glow. She was gone. In her place stood a woman who finally knew her worth. Weeks passed. Then months. Rachel moved out of state, away from the headlines and the shame. My parents tried to mend things, but I kept my distance. I didn't need their apology. I needed peace. Jason reached out once more, not romantically, but as someone who'd also been burned by someone he trusted. We had coffee. Talked. Laughed a little. There was a kind of comfort between us, a quiet understanding of what it means to be betrayed by people you thought were your future. One evening, alone in my condo, I looked at a photo I had never framed, a picture of Rachel and me when we were kids. I was holding her hand, beaming at the camera. She wasn't looking at me. She never did. I placed the photo back in the drawer. This wasn't revenge. Not really. It was revelation. It was me finally refusing to be silent. Some stories aren't wrapped in bows. Some sisters don't reconcile. Some wounds don't get apologies. But healing? Healing comes when you stop begging for love from the people who taught you to feel invisible and start showing up for yourself. To anyone who's ever felt like the forgotten one, the overlooked sibling, the quiet achiever in the shadow of someone louder, you're not invisible. You're just standing in the wrong room. Find your light. And never, ever shrink again.